The windmill stood silent against the backdrop of the desolate plain, its blades motionless as if it had been frozen in time. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked earth and painting the sky with hues of amber and crimson. It was said that this windmill, perched atop a hill overlooking an abandoned ranch, hadn't turned for years, not since the day old man Harper disappeared without a trace. People from a nearby town of Dust Hollow whispered about the windmill whenever they gathered around campfires at night. Some claimed it was cursed. Others believed it harbored secrets buried deep within its wooden frame. But most avoided talking about it altogether, fearing what might be lurking in the silence of those steel blades. Until midnight, when it spun backwards. No one knew why or how, but stories told of eerie noises echoing through the valley during the witching hour, groans like the creaking of ancient gears followed by a sudden rush of wind that seemed unnatural, even for the gusts that swept through the desert. Those who dare approach the windmill after dark often returned shaken, their faces pale and their words fragmented. They spoke of lights flickering inside the structure, though no windows adorned its walls. Of voices calling out from somewhere unseen, though no living soul could be found there. It was these whispers that drew Jed Calloway to the windmill one fateful evening. A lone wanderer with a reputation for curiosity bordering on recklessness, Jed had heard the tales while passing through Dust Hollow. He wasn't superstitious, nor did he believe in ghosts or curses, but something about the story intrigued him, a pull he couldn't explain, as if the windmill itself were calling to him. As Jed approached the base of the hill, the air grew heavy, thick with dust kicked up by his boots. The ground beneath him felt uneven, as though nature herself had turned her back on this place. Tall grasses swayed lazily in the fading light, whispering secrets only they understood. The wind carried the faint scent of rusted metal and dry wood, mingling with the acrid tang of sagebrush. He stopped at the foot of the hill, gazing upward at the looming silhouette of the windmill. Its once white paint was now chipped and faded, revealing splinters of bare wood beneath. The blades, jagged and worn, hung limply, refusing to yield to the gentle breeze that brushed against them. For a moment, Jed hesitated, wondering if he should turn back. But then, little did he know, his decision would unravel mysteries older than the settlement of Dust Hollow itself. With a deep breath, Jed began to climb. Each step took him closer to the source of the legend, each crunch of gravel underfoot amplifying the tension building in his chest. By the time he reached the top, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a twilight glow that bathed the landscape in a soft purple hue. The windmill loomed above him, its presence both imposing and strangely inviting. Jed circled the base of the structure, inspecting every detail. There were no doors, no visible entrances, just smooth wooden planks sealed tightly together. Yet he noticed something peculiar, a small hatch near the bottom, barely noticeable unless you were looking closely. It was covered in dirt and cobwebs, almost as if it had been hidden deliberately. Using the tip of his boot, Jed cleared away the debris, revealing a rusted iron latch. He hesitated for a moment, then grasped the cold metal and pulled. The hatch groaned open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. A musty odor wafted up, carrying with it the promise of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Without hesitation, Jed descended. His lantern cast flickering light over the rough stone walls, illuminating patches of moss and dampness where water had seeped through. The air grew cooler with each step, until finally he reached the bottom, a dimly lit chamber filled with strange contraptions and tools scattered haphazardly across the floor. In the center of the room stood a massive gear mechanism, its teeth gnarled and worn. Chains hung loosely from the ceiling, connecting to various pulleys and levers that appeared to have been part of some elaborate system. But what caught Jed's attention was the large map pinned to the wall opposite him. It depicted the surrounding area in meticulous detail, marking locations Jed didn't recognize, along with symbols and notes written in a handwriting he couldn't decipher. As he studied the map, a noise echoed through the chamber, a low rumble that vibrated through the floor beneath his feet. Startled, Jed spun around, his lantern swinging wildly. The sound grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable whirring of machinery coming to life. Somewhere above, the windmill's blades groaned, beginning to move ever so slightly. Jed froze, his heart pounding in his chest. What had he awakened? Before he could react, the chamber fell silent once more, leaving only the faint hum of energy lingering in the air. Reluctantly, he continued his exploration, uncovering more clues. Journals filled with cryptic entries, blueprints detailing intricate designs, and photographs of people whose faces bore expressions of both awe and terror. Among the artifacts, one photograph stood out, a portrait of a family standing proudly in front of the very windmill Jed now explored. The father, dressed in formal attire, held a young boy on his shoulders, while the mother stood beside them, her smile radiant despite the harsh conditions of the frontier. Beneath the photo, scrawled in faded ink, were the words, "Before the turning." Confused, Jed pocketed the photograph, intending to study it further later. As he turned to leave, another sound reached his ears, this time, distinct and chilling. Footsteps echoed from somewhere deeper within the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. Jed's grip tightened on his lantern, his pulse quickening as the source of the noise remained elusive. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to remain calm. No answer came, but the footsteps ceased abruptly, as if whoever or whatever had been following him had vanished into thin air. Shaken, Jed retraced his steps, ascending the staircase with renewed urgency. When he emerged into the night air, the windmill's blades were spinning again, though not in the direction they should have been. Counterclockwise, slow and deliberate, defying all logic. Jed stared at the sight, disbelief clouding his mind. How was this possible? And why now, after so many years of stillness? Back in Dust Hollow, Jed sought answers among the townsfolk. Many dismissed his claims as fanciful nonsense, attributing the phenomenon to natural causes or tricks of the mind. But a few, including the elderly widow Mrs. Whitmore, listened intently, their eyes wide with recognition. "That windmill," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the din of the saloon. "It belonged to my great-grandfather, Elias Harper. He built it himself, using plans he claimed came from elsewhere." "Elsewhere?" Jed repeated, leaning forward. Mrs. Whitmore nodded, her gaze distant. "They say he made a deal, though no one knows exactly what entailed. All I remember is that after the windmill stopped turning, everything changed. People disappeared, crops failed, and the land itself seemed to die." Jed absorbed her words, piecing together fragments of the puzzle. The windmill wasn't merely a relic of the past. It was a gateway, a key to unlocking truths better left buried. But as he delved deeper into the mystery, he realized that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. One stormy night, driven by desperation and determination, Jed returned to the windmill. Armed with the knowledge he had gathered, he descended into the chamber once more, determined to confront whatever lay hidden within. The storm raged outside, lightning illuminating the interior with fleeting bursts of brilliance. Thunder rolled like cannon fire, adding to the surreal atmosphere. As Jed worked to decipher the mechanisms, the windmill's blades began to spin faster, their counterclockwise motion growing more erratic. The gears in the chamber groaned in protest, straining against forces unseen. Suddenly, the entire structure shuddered violently, throwing Jed off balance. In that moment, a figure materialized before him. A man cloaked in shadow, his features obscured yet undeniably familiar. "You shouldn't have come here," the figure said, his voice low and resonant. "Who are you?" Jed demanded, clutching the lantern tightly. "I am what remains of Elias Harper," the figure replied, stepping closer. "And you've unleashed something far beyond your understanding." Before Jed could respond, the windmill erupted in a burst of blinding light. When the brilliance faded, the chamber stood empty, save for the remnants of the gear mechanism, now reduced to rubble. Outside, the windmill's blades stilled once more, returning to their eternal silence. But Jed knew the truth now. The windmill hadn't stopped turning because it was broken. It had stopped because it was waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to awaken it. And though the mystery had been revealed, the cost of that revelation lingered, haunting Jed long after he left the desolate plain behind. For the windmill would spin again, but only at midnight, when the world slept and the veil between dimensions grew thin. Until then, it waited, patient and unyielding, guarding secrets that some feared to uncover and others refused to forget. The days that followed were anything but ordinary for Jed. Haunted by the vision of a mysterious figure claiming to be what remained of Elias Harper, he found himself unable to shake off the eerie sensation that lingered in his chest. The Windmill's strange behavior, its defiance of natural laws, had left an indelible mark on him. He couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the story than what Mrs. Whitmore had shared or what he had uncovered in the chamber below. Dust Hollow buzzed with whispers after Jed's return. Some ridiculed him for believing in such fantastical tales, while others, especially those who had lost loved ones over the years, began to take notice. A few even ventured out to the Windmill themselves, though none dared approach it as closely as Jed had. They claimed to feel a pull, a magnetic force drawing them toward the hill, yet they always retreated before reaching the base of the structure. Jed spent countless nights poring over the artifacts he had brought back from the chamber, the journals, blueprints, and photographs. Each page seemed to reveal another layer of complexity to the mystery. The entries in the journal spoke of experiments, trials conducted under the cover of darkness. There were references to the turning and the alignment, cryptic phrases that hinted at some celestial event tied to the Windmill's operation. One journal entry, written in haste, caught his attention. Tonight is the night. If the calculations are correct, the alignment will occur precisely at midnight. I must ensure everything is ready. Failure is not an option. What lies beyond this point may change everything we know about our world. Beneath the entry was a date, exactly 25 years prior to the day Jed first visited the Windmill. Could it be mere coincidence? Or was the Windmill's peculiar behavior linked to whatever Elias Harper had attempted on that fateful night? As the days turned into weeks, Jed became increasingly obsessed. He visited the Windmill almost nightly, studying its movements or lack thereof from a safe distance. On clear nights, beneath skies dotted with stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, he noticed subtle changes in the surrounding landscape. The grass near the base of the hill appeared greener, healthier than anywhere else in the arid region. Strange flowers bloomed where none had grown before, their petals glowing faintly in the moonlight. It was as if the land itself was healing, rejuvenated by some hidden energy emanating from the Windmill. But the most unsettling discovery came during one of these visits. While examining the area around the Windmill, Jed stumbled upon a series of carvings etched into the rock face of the hill. At first glance, they resembled nothing more than primitive symbols, crude lines scratched into the stone. However, upon closer inspection, Jed realized they formed patterns strikingly similar to those depicted in the blueprints he had recovered from the chamber. Until now, I thought these designs were purely theoretical, Jed muttered to himself, tracing the outlines of the carvings with his fingers. But what if they're instructions, maps, or warnings? The realization sent chills down his spine. If the carvings were indeed connected to the Windmill, then the structure wasn't just a relic of the past. It was part of something far greater, something that transcended the boundaries of time and space. Meanwhile, life in Dust Hollow continued its slow pace. The townsfolk, unaware of Jed's discoveries, went about their daily routines, blissfully ignorant of the secrets buried in their midst. Yet, subtle shifts began to affect the community. Crops that had previously struggled to grow suddenly flourished, yielding bountiful harvests. Wells long thought to have run dry produced fresh water once again. Even the weather seemed to favor the town, with storms bypassing Dust Hollow entirely. For many, these changes were miracles, a sign of better times ahead. But for Jed, they were pieces of a puzzle falling into place. The Windmill wasn't merely affecting its immediate surroundings. Its influence extended outward, reshaping reality itself. And if the carvings were any indication, its power was only beginning to awaken. Little did he know, however, that his actions had drawn unwanted attention. One evening, as Jed sat atop his horse overlooking the Windmill, he noticed movement in the shadows. Figures emerged in the darkness, their faces obscured by wide-brimmed hats and scarves. Their presence was unmistakably hostile. "You shouldn't be poking around up here," one of them growled, stepping forward. His voice carried the weight of authority, though his identity remained concealed. And who are you to tell me what to do? Jed replied, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his revolver. We've been watching you, another figure interjected. You think you're uncovering secrets, but you're playing with forces you don't understand. Jed narrowed his eyes, suspicion rising within him. Who sent you? And why should I care what you think? The lead figure hesitated, glancing briefly at his companions before speaking. Let's just say we represent interested parties. Parties who would prefer the windmill remain undisturbed. Before Jed could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept through the valley, carrying with it an unnatural chill. The figures recoiled slightly, their confidence faltering. Whatever power resided within the windmill, it seemed to sense their intrusion and disapproved. Taking advantage of the momentary distraction, Jed spurred his horse into action, galloping away from the scene. Behind him, the figures shouted threats, but he paid them no mind. His focus was fixed on the windmill, now glowing faintly in the distance, its blade spinning silently in defiance of gravity. Back in his makeshift camp, Jed pieced together the events of the evening. Clearly, others knew about the windmill, and they wanted it kept secret. But why? What purpose did it serve, and whose interests were truly being protected? The answers eluded him for now, but Jed resolved to press forward. The next full moon approached, and according to the journal entries, it marked a significant alignment. Whatever Elias Harper had attempted all those years ago, it might happen again, and Jed intended to be ready. As the appointed night arrived, the sky above Dust Hollow transformed into a canvas of brilliance. Stars shone brighter than ever, their light casting silvery reflections across the desert floor. Jed made his way to the windmill, his lantern swinging rhythmically with each step. The air crackled with anticipation, charged with energy that prickled against his skin. When he reached the base of the hill, the windmill stood silent, its blades motionless. Yet Jed felt it stirring, like a beast awakening from slumber. Around him, the ground vibrated faintly, and the faint hum of machinery echoed from somewhere unseen. At exactly midnight, the world seemed to pause. Time itself stretched, elongating the seconds until they felt like eternity. Then, without warning, the windmill roared to life. Its blades spun wildly, defying physics as they twisted counterclockwise faster and faster. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the structure in flashes of electric blue. From the chamber below, a deafening roar erupted, a sound unlike anything Jed had ever heard. It was neither mechanical nor organic, but something altogether otherworldly. The ground trembled violently, forcing Jed to cling to the nearest rock for balance. Above, the windmill's glow intensified, bathing the entire valley in an ethereal light. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the phenomenon ceased. The windmill stilled, its blades returning to their usual position. Silence descended once more, broken only by the distant cries of startled animals fleeing the disturbance. Breathing heavily, Jed approached the windmill cautiously. Something was different, something profound. As he reached the base, he noticed a new carving etched into the stone, glowing faintly in the residual light. It depicted a figure standing between two worlds, one hand reaching toward the heavens, the other grasping a key. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, not spoken aloud, but resonating directly within his thoughts. "You have seen only the beginning," it said, calm yet commanding. "The windmill is not a machine. It is a doorway. And you, Jedediah Calloway, stand on the threshold of destiny." Stunned, Jed stumbled backward, his lantern falling to the ground. Flames flickered weakly in the darkness, casting shadows that danced like spirits freed from their bonds. He didn't fully comprehend the message, but one thing was certain. The windmill's secrets ran deeper than anyone could imagine, and whether he liked it or not, Jed was now part of its story. The days following the windmill's midnight awakening left Jed Calloway in a state of perpetual unease. The voice that echoed within his mind, though distant and detached, carried an authority that demanded respect. "You have seen only the beginning," it had said. Those words reverberated through his thoughts, haunting him with their implications. What did it mean? And more importantly, what role was he meant to play in this unfolding drama? Jed returned to Dust Hollow, his boots stirring up clouds of dust as he walked through quiet streets. The town seemed unchanged on the surface. Shops remained open. People went about their business, and the saloon buzzed with laughter and conversation. Yet beneath the veneer of normalcy, something felt different. A subtle shift hung in the air, like the calm before a storm. The townsfolk noticed Jed's return but gave him wide berth, their eyes darting nervously whenever he passed by. It wasn't fear they exhibited, exactly, but rather a wary curiosity, as if they sensed he carried secrets too dangerous to share. He sought refuge in a small cabin he'd rented at the edge of town, its walls weathered by years of harsh desert winds. Inside, he lit a lantern and spread out the artifacts he had salvaged from the windmill. The journals, blueprints, photographs, and now the newly discovered carving etched into the stone. Each item told part of the story, but the whole picture eluded him. Piece by piece, he examined them, searching for connections, patterns, or anything that might shed light on the enigma. One journal entry, written in Elias Harper's hand, stood out among the rest. It described an experiment conducted during a rare celestial alignment, a conjunction of planets not expected to occur again for another century. Harper believed this alignment would amplify the windmill's power, allowing him to unlock its true potential. But the details were vague, cryptic almost to the point of being indecipherable. Phrases like the key to crossing and boundaries dissolving littered the text, leaving Jed frustrated yet intrigued. As he read deeper into the entries, a chilling realization dawned on him. Harper hadn't been conducting mere experiments. He had been attempting to breach dimensions, to step beyond the confines of reality itself. And whatever force resided within the windmill, it appeared both willing and capable of aiding such an endeavor. But why? And at what cost? By day, Jed ventured into the surrounding wilderness, exploring areas he hadn't dared approach before. Rumors among the townsfolk spoke of strange phenomena occurring near the windmill, crops growing overnight, wells filling with water despite no rain falling, and animals behaving erratically. These stories weren't baseless. Jed witnessed similar occurrences firsthand. On one occasion, he stumbled upon a grove of trees flourishing amidst the barren desert, their leaves shimmering faintly in the sunlight. Beneath the roots of one tree, he uncovered a peculiar crystal-like object, its surface refracting light in ways that defied explanation. When he touched it, a surge of energy coursed through his body, accompanied by visions of places he couldn't recognize, lands bathed in perpetual twilight, skies filled with twin moons, and cities built of materials unknown to man. Shaken, Jed pocketed the crystal and retreated, vowing to study it further. Whatever connection existed between the windmill and these anomalies, it was clear the structure served as a focal point, a nexus where realities converged. That night, unable to sleep, Jed sat outside his cabin, gazing up at the stars. The constellations above seemed brighter than ever, their light piercing the darkness with unnatural clarity. He thought back to the voice that had spoken to him, its tone both reassuring and foreboding. Who, or what, had addressed him? And why had it chosen him specifically? A sudden rustling in the bushes nearby startled him from his thoughts. Grabbing his revolver, Jed turned toward the sound, ready for whatever might emerge. To his surprise, it was Mrs. Whitmore, her frail frame silhouetted against the moonlight. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They're watching." "Who's watching?" Jed asked, lowering his weapon slightly. "The ones who want the windmill kept quiet," she replied, glancing over her shoulder nervously. "I didn't believe the stories before, but now I see the truth." "What truth?" Jed pressed, leaning forward. Mrs. Whitmore hesitated, her gaze flickering between him and the horizon. Elias Harper didn't just build the windmill. He summoned something ancient, and when he tried to control it, he failed. That's why he disappeared. Her words sent chills down Jed's spine. Summoned? Controlled? Could it be possible that the windmill harbored some kind of entity, an intelligence bound within its gears and blades? Before he could ask more, Mrs. Whitmore placed a folded piece of paper in his hand. "Take this. It belonged to my great-grandfather. Read it carefully, but burn it afterward. If anyone finds out you have it." She trailed off, her expression grim. Without another word, she turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving Jed alone with the mysterious document. Inside the cabin, Jed unfolded the paper under the glow of his lantern. It contained a single sentence written in bold, hurried handwriting. "If the turning begins, let it finish, no matter the cost." Beneath the sentence was a diagram, a series of concentric circles intersected by lines radiating outward like spokes on a wheel. At the center of the design was a symbol identical to the one carved into the stone near the windmill. Jed stared at the drawing, his mind racing. What did it represent? A map? A blueprint? Or perhaps a warning? Days turned into weeks as Jed delved deeper into the mystery. His nights were spent studying the artifacts, deciphering codes, and piecing together fragments of knowledge. During the day, he scouted the area around the windmill, mapping the locations of the anomalies he encountered. Slowly, a pattern emerged, a network of sites connected by invisible threads, all leading back to the windmill. Yet, as his understanding grew, so did the danger surrounding him. Shadows followed him wherever he went, figures lurking just out of sight, whispering threats into the wind. One evening, while returning to his cabin, Jed spotted a group of men gathered near the windmill. Their faces were obscured, but their intentions were clear. They meant to destroy the structure. Enraged, Jed confronted them, demanding answers. They laughed, dismissing him as a fool. "It has to go," one of them spat. "What's happening isn't natural. This place is cursed." "It's not cursed," Jed shot back, his voice rising. "It's misunderstood. You don't even know what you're dealing with." "Then tell us," another shouted, stepping closer. "Explain why crops grow overnight, why animals act crazy, why the ground trembles every time that thing spins." "I can't explain it all," Jed admitted, his frustration boiling over. "But destroying it won't fix anything. In fact, it might make things worse." The argument ended without resolution, but Jed knew the threat remained. The windmill was a beacon, attracting those who feared its power as much as those who sought to harness it. And as long as it stood, tensions would continue to rise. One fateful evening, as the full moon hung low in the sky, Jed decided to confront the windmill once more. Armed with the knowledge he had gained, he descended into the chamber below, determined to uncover the final piece of the puzzle. The mechanisms hummed softly, their vibrations resonating through the air. Chains clinked gently, swaying as if moved by an unseen hand. In the center of the room, the massive gear mechanism began to turn, its teeth grinding against each other with a sound that echoed like thunder. Jed approached cautiously, his lantern casting flickering shadows across the walls. As he reached the base of the mechanism, a panel slid open, revealing a hollow compartment. Inside lay an object unlike anything he had ever seen, a crystalline key, pulsating with an inner light. Without hesitation, Jed grasped the key, feeling its warmth seep into his palm. Immediately, the chamber erupted in activity. Gears whirred faster, chains tightened, and the entire structure shuddered violently. Above, the windmill's blades spun counterclockwise, faster and faster until they blurred into a silver streak against the night sky. And then the voice returned, not in his mind this time, but echoing throughout the chamber, loud and commanding. "You have taken the first step, Jedediah Calloway. Now you must choose. Will you embrace your destiny or retreat into ignorance?" Frozen in place, Jed struggled to process the question. Destiny? Was he truly meant to wield the power of the windmill, to navigate the boundaries between worlds? Or was he merely a pawn in a game far larger than himself? Before he could respond, the windmill stilled once more, its blades returning to their usual position. The chamber fell silent, save for the soft glow emanating from the key still clutched in his hand. For the first time in weeks, Jed allowed himself a moment of reflection. Whatever path lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. The windmill had chosen him, and there was no turning back.